Hey everyone, welcome to Selling from Stage for Business Owners. It is so very good to see you. My name is Mark of Strategic Boardroom. Let me know where you are from and what line of work that you're in. You've got a couple of people in here already. This is very good to see you. Mahmuda, has the session started? No, but it has now. Sorry, I was running just a couple of minutes late because I was reviewing my slides and there was a couple. I was having an issue with them. I am having a problem with my headset. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, it might, okay. I think it's me on my end. All right. Um, so yeah, so the session has started. Good to see you, and you can see now. Very good. All right. So, we've got you're joining from YouTube. Good to see you again. All right. And you're saying hello and you are ready. Very good. Well, I'm glad to have you here. Let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in. Um, let's see. Where are you from and what line of work are you in? All right. So go ahead and answer that for me. And this is going to drive me a little bit bananas here. Sorry, guys. I'm having a channel issue here. Give me 1 second. This is going to drive me crazy. You can hear me, but I can't hear myself exactly. Okay, I think that's a bit better. All right. So, thank you. That's it. All right. I must have bumped it on the top because it wasn't coming all the way through. All right. Well, you are here because you want to learn to sell from stage. Now, it's interesting because I teach a bunch of different things, and I see a couple of people whose names are familiar in here already, so it's good to see you back. And if this is your first time, welcome. It's interesting though because there's several different types of selling, and everyone says, well, all sales are the same. They are definitely, absolutely not. That is not the truth. So, um, let's see. We've got Mahmuda is. I am from Ontario, Canada. I am interested to become a vendor selling plants. Very good. All right. And Ima is in Bangladesh, marketing and ideation. All right, excellent. Good to have you both. So, the reason why I'm bringing this up and why I'm bringing this up now is because selling from stage or selling to masses is very different than selling one to one. There are similarities. I'm not going to say they're completely different and that some of them aren't necessarily translatable from one to the other. You're saying media and publication. Excellent. Well, good to have you. Again, several of you I see joining now. Let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in, because we're getting ready to talk about selling not one to one, but selling one to many. And that is a very different thing. And I have got a ton of information on here. So I'm just letting you know, if you have questions along the way, I'm probably not going to be able to spend as much time getting into all the different nooks and crannies like I have in the past, just because there's so much information on this one. And the difference is because selling one to one, it's not necessarily that it's easier, it's just a different skill set than selling one to many. But I will say that selling one to one, I know a lot of people who really enjoy selling one to one, and I actually prefer selling one to one versus one to many. Now, I've gotten good at selling one to many, just like for those of you who are on this call, I have to sell to you, right? Just I have to sell to some of you to stay, and some of you already left, right? That's okay. Like that's what happens though with selling one to one versus selling one to many, is that you have to give people a little bit more breadcrumbs to follow you along the way. And you have to get that much faster. People say that people's attention spans are lower. They are not. I believe that people's attention spans have always been what they have been. The difference is that they have a much lower tolerance for boredom, which means I can't be boring, which means I have to tell you stories. I have to keep you engaged. If I'm going up on stage and telling you about a story where I completely bombed and I completely forgot what I was talking about and got in the middle of it, I'm like, oh man. And that's happened. That's happened. Anything like that happened to you guys? If you're up on stage or in front of a crowd and you have no idea what you were saying, you completely lost your train of thought. Yeah, it happens. And those are the sorts of things that you have to get comfortable with. But selling one to one, there are a lot of pros to this. The pros and cons. The pros is that it's more intimate, right? You can get to know people a little bit better. You can tailor the conversation a little bit better. And they are excellent for high ticket. Not that you can't sell one to many with high ticket, but it's much easier if you're selling a $30,000, $40,000, or $300,000 high ticket item, it's a lot easier to do when you're doing it one to one. The cons is it takes a lot of time. And it can also be very costly, not just in time, but in money and travel expense and opportunity costs. Because when you're doing that one to one selling, you can't be doing anything else. You certainly can't be distracted. It also has limited reach. So think about that. In terms of limited reach, you can't even though you can have that same conversation multiple times, you're only going to have it one person at a time. So it is limited in your reach and in your scope. So again, what we're talking about here is we're making the distinction between selling one to one versus selling one to many. And that one to many model, I want you to think about the number of buying units that are in the room. This is the line of demarcation where you're selling one to one versus selling one to many. And it's the number of buying units or buying decisions in the room. I'll give you an example. If I'm sitting let's say I'm sitting at someone's kitchen table and I'm selling them an insurance policy, okay? That is a one-to-one sale. If I am sitting at a table and I'm selling an insurance policy and their adult children are sitting next to them, that is still a one-to-one sale because it's still one buying decision. If I'm sitting in a room and I'm talking to, again, it could be two different people, that adult and that adult child, but there are two different buying decisions being made. Now I'm selling one to many, and it is different. It's a little bit different. And when you have multiple buying units in a room, that's where it really gets tricky. And you have to approach that in a slightly different way. And you want to do that in a way where you don't feel gross. I mean, I know a lot of people, they hate selling. And the reason why they hate selling is because they feel like they have to convince something to do. They have to convince that person to do something that they don't want to do. Or they hate asking people for money. Is this true for anybody here? We got quite a few people that are joining. Is this true for anybody here where you hate getting that part where you hate asking them for money? Like, oh man, here it comes. It was interesting. I got on a call last night with a buddy of mine, and his, I'm going to guess around 10-year-old son was asking me for money to sponsor him in a reading bookathon, like a reading marathon or whatever. And I said, sure. And that was it. I didn't offer him anything else. I didn't say, well, how much? How much did you like? And then he said, okay. And I say, okay, well, what do I need to do? Right. And I wanted him to feel comfortable enough to do that, because ask for money can be so tricky because of our own personal relationships with money. And I'll tell you, the first time I got on stage and asked for $5,000 and $500 a month, I was like, oh, I was wanting to choke on my cud because it was so difficult to say that. Now, because I have a much better relationship with money, because I've done it a couple of times, probably, a couple thousand times at this point, now it's much more easier for me to do that. But I also know I bring tremendous value that's far in excess of what I charge, right? So again, and you don't even want to feel like you're being salesy, right? You're being that greasy, salesy guy. No one wants to feel that way. You're feeling like you're this guy, feeling icky or gross, right? But this is when we're going to talk about taking a strategic approach from selling from stage. And you have one job, and your job is to build massive amounts of trust with your audience. We're going to be talking about how to build trust. And I'm telling you, if you're not building trust with your audience from the very, very beginning, you will not sell well. Like, I'm just telling you, that's just the way it is. You have to build trust with your audience. And the ways to do that, there's two main ways. Number one, demonstrate good character. And number two, demonstrate high levels of competence. But again, like I said, we're going to get to that. Before we get any further, though, we are going to get into the agenda. In the agenda, we're going to be talking about systems of the business, but we're not going to get full on into the systems. I know some of you have watched me before and watched other videos on YouTube, or maybe you've been in training with me. Maybe some of you are in my school community, but you've heard me talk about the systems, especially the Viper framework, the vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. I am not going to get all the way into the weeds on the systems. I'm only going to get into vision because that is going to be very relevant to helping you sell better from stage. We're going to be talking about the systems component, but only in a limited fashion. Then we're going to get to psychology, specific into the buying psychology of things in terms of what getting into the mind of the buyer. We're We're going to be talking about preparing the offer, which you have to know the offer up front. If you don't know the offer up front, this is going to be really tough for you to sell well. So I don't want you thinking like, well, I'll just kind of put together my presentation and then figure out my offer along the way. No, you really need to start with the offer first, because if you're trying to put something together and it's not in alignment with the offer, you're going to struggle. So I'm just telling you, this is one of the things you have to keep in mind. All right, so let's get to, and then we're going to talk about creating the presentation and at the end, the very end, the delivery. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. For those of you who signed up through Eventbrite, you will be getting the replay on this, so I just want to let you know that. If you are on YouTube, I know Ima, you are watching this on YouTube, and several others of you are watching this on YouTube. Obviously, this will be posted. I'm going to carve it up a little bit, and I will repost it, but it's also available for you to rewatch in the live video feeds. Everything I'm going to be talking about related to the systems is related to this book on the screen, or the book over the top of my shoulder here is The Time Wealthy Advantage. That's the book I published last May. If you are interested in getting a copy of your own, and if you are in the US and you'd like a signed copy, go to strategicboardroom.com. You'll see it there at the bottom. Let's see, well, yeah, there it is, right at the bottom. So, I got to change that here. Today's session is not strategic leadership. It is actually selling one to many. Yep, sorry, I did not change that. All right. Do you think I would know these things by now? All right. There you go. So, Strategic Boardroom, if you go to strategicboardroom.com, you can get a copy of this book, and there's a couple of different offers on there as well. So go to strategicboardroom.com. It's right in the middle of the very front page. You cannot miss it. And if you are outside the United States and you would like to buy it, get a copy of this, I won't be able to sign it, but your better bet is to get it directly from Amazon. And that is the Time Wealthy Advantage. All right, so that is everything there. But what I'm going to be talking about just today, I'm going to tell you the whole framework, the Viper Method framework, but I am only going to be talking about personal and business vision primarily. So, but the whole framework is vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And this is a top-down framework in terms of how you're going to set up your business. But I'm going to be talking about this specifically as it relates to you in how you are going to craft your message to sell from stage in a way that is going to be compelling to listen to, and is going to be addressing the people that are most likely to buy from you. Okay, so let's get into that. And this is specifically around vision. Vision has two components, and vision is made up of both personal vision and business vision. When you're thinking of personal vision, it's basically what you want your life to look like, right? So it's, in other words, you're thinking about it from the perspective of, okay, well, if you woke up tomorrow with a pile of money in your bank account where you really didn't have to worry about income generation anymore, what would you want your life to look like from a day-to-day perspective, right? So in other words, your personal vision is going to ask you this question: where do you want to go? Where do you want your life to look like? What do you want your relationship with your friends to look like? What do you want your relationship with your family members to look like? Maybe even your faith. What do you want that to look like? I want you to think of all these different things in terms of what you want your personal vision to look like. Again, if it wasn't defined by income generation, if your job description wasn't also a life description. So once you have that defined, and we're going to come back to that here in a second, but once you have that defined, then you're going to reverse engineer a business vision that's going to deliver that personal vision to you. You're like, cool, that's where you want to go? Cool, this is how we're going to get there. And that's the business vision. And the problem that I see in this is many times I've sat in conferences and with people who I know really well who are making 6 and 7 figures a month, and their life is a disaster. But you know what they were more worried about? How to make an extra couple $100,000 a month so they could get to that next level. That's the thing they were worried about. Even though they were miserable at home, this is the thing that they were most focused on. And I will just tell you that, like, that's just an empty well. And the danger in creating a business vision before creating a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm telling you, I've been down that road before, and I'm not here to preach to you, but I'm just telling you that sucks. I'm in my early 50s now, and I am living so many different aspects of my personal vision, and it's just fantastic. I really enjoy my life. I have a really good life, and it's been a life by design. But I will tell you, it's not always been this way. There's been times where I was so frustrated with how things were playing out, And I was like, man, this has got to be easier. And right now I'm in kind of a shift again because interests shift, things change. And this is what happens in, as we progress through life. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this. And in terms of your personal vision specifically, I just want you to think about what what are the things that you look forward to? Who are the people that you look forward to spending time with? And think about it from that perspective. Think about it in terms of relationships, not just the things that you can buy. All right. So let's get into business vision. So the business vision specifically is defined by 3 C's. The 3 C's of business vision are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Core purpose, core values, and client avatar. So anytime I get invited in to work as a strategist for a company, almost universally, they are deficient in one or all of these areas, is the core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And this is so important, and I'm going to demonstrate how it's very critical for you to get these things very clear as you are getting ready to speak from stage. So for those of you, looks like we have a bunch of people that just joined us. Let me know where you're from and what line of work that you're in. And we've got several people on here already from, it's funny, I don't have any Americans on this call from what I could see so far. Ontario and Ghana. All right, very good. All right, so the three C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. If you get nothing else from today, please take time to go through these 3, because I'm telling you, anytime I've seen a deficiency in these 3 areas, where when I get invited in as a CSO or, a fractional chief strategic officer, or as a strategist, whatever I'm being hired in for, anytime I see a deficiency in one of these 3 areas, the business is struggling. And it's struggling in it could be in multiple areas. They're struggling with their lead generation. They're struggling with their sales. They're struggling with their leadership. They're struggling with their employees showing up and leaving whenever they want. There's conflict, not healthy conflict. There's all sorts of stuff going on. So I'm just telling you that these 3 C's of business vision, they are foundational to a business. And they are absolutely, if you are not clear about these 3 things when you step on stage or you step in front of a crowd and try to sell to them, it's going to show. It's going to be very clear. So this is what I'm trying to save you from some of that embarrassment. Let's get into core purpose. Core purpose is specifically what business are you in and what problems do you specifically solve. And it's really important that you be highly specific in your answer. If you just say, well, I'm in real estate, that doesn't tell me much. If you just say, well, I'm in IT or I'm in AI, again, doesn't tell me much. But if you say, well, I'm a residential realtor that really likes to sell single family properties on the south side of Miami, that tells me a little bit more. In fact, it tells me it tells me a lot more, because now I know where area of expertise that you have. Or if you're telling me that you develop workflows for restaurants, specifically in using AI in terms of ordering, automated ordering for customers, okay, now that's telling me a little bit more than what I knew before. So you have to be really specific in your core purpose. If you are not specific in your core purpose, it's your offer is not going to land as well as it should with the avatar in the audience. We're going to get to avatar here in just a second. So that is core purpose. When we're talking about core values, so core purpose is specifically what business that you're in and what problems do you specifically solve. Core values are what matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you are no longer in business? And you might be thinking, oh gosh, here we are with these squishy core values. Like, do we really need to take time to go through these? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And the reason why is because your core values are what determine your company culture. And your company culture and your company brand are inextricably linked. Your company culture is what's experienced by the people who work within your organization. Your company brand is what's experienced by your clients on the outside of your organization. So you can't just think that you're going to have that you're not going to take the time to define your core values, the things that are most important to you. Because again, if this is your business, you have to think about this. If this is your business specifically, you have to recognize that your business is just an extension of you. So again, there's a few of you told me what business that you're in. Your business that you created is an extension of you, and your core values will extend to that business. And the reason, well, you might be thinking, well, how do I define my core values? Well, the thing is, you define your core values by the things that you are willing to act upon, that you believe in so strongly that you're willing to get up off the couch and move. I use this example, like I value peanut M&Ms, right? But am I willing to go to war over them? Probably not. Like if someone breaks in my house and says, "Give me your peanut M&Ms," right? And I'm like, "Dude, take them," right? They're not me. I can always go buy more. But if they come in and threaten my family, they're going to be met with some pretty harsh resistance because that is violating a core value for me. So a core value would represent something that you're willing to get up and take action upon because it means so strongly to you. So think about where maybe it was a job that you left or a miserable boss that you once worked for that you're like, man, I will never be that boss. What was the violation of the core value for you? Maybe it was honesty. Maybe it was integrity. Maybe it was they said one thing and did another. To me, that's integrity. But whatever it is for you, that violation probably represented a core value for you. That's probably something that you need to identify and put that into writing. Think of the other end of the spectrum were things that were really, really good in your life. If there was a moment that you could relive, if you like, or reenact if you could, what would that be for you? So I want you to think about these again. These extremes in your life often serve as role models for us in terms of what our core values really are. So that's what you're going to use. And here's the thing, I'm going to leave this here, but if you don't take the time to define your core values, they will be defined by the strongest personality that's in the room. So if that's not always you, that's a problem. But when you step on stage and you're demonstrating your core values from stage, when you're demonstrating your core values in front of a camera or in front of a crowd, I promise you it resonates. And for me, like people tend to get to know my core values pretty quickly. Again, I had 30 or so people on this call. I have about a third of that now, but it's interesting because some people, maybe they're in a rush and they couldn't stay. Maybe some of them were just not in alignment with my core values. Like, I don't like this guy. I'm out, right? Maybe for whatever reason. Okay. Maybe they just don't like my face. Well, I can't change my face. And I'm certainly not going to try to change my core values. So this is what I'm saying. Like you have to recognize that the core values can be polarizing and which means that you will attract just like a magnet, but you will also repel. Again, just like a magnet. So it's important that you define these core values. So we've talked about core purpose. We talked about core values. Now we're going to be talking about the client avatar. Now the client avatar is incredibly important. And you'd be amazed at how many businesses I go into that are doing multiple millions of dollars in revenues and they don't have their avatar well defined. You're like, how in the world did you get here? Like, how did you do this well so far? Right? Now, granted, several million is not that much, but like, how did you get this far at all? So when you're talking about client avatar, what you're trying to figure out here is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? It's really important that you know who it is that you want to serve. And it's also really important that you identify them. It's important that you identify them through their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. And there's also even something that you can think of their technographics. Technographics is technology, right? But geographics is where they are, right? Demographics is who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Are they old? Are they young? Are they rich? Are they poor? Do they have kids? Do they have no kids, right? Whatever. What are the demographics that they represent? And what are the psychographics? The psychographics is how they think and how they buy. The other one that I mentioned is technographics, and that could be what technology do they adopt? Meaning, are they using social media or are they using certain technology that you could also plug into? But that, in my mind, that also ties into a sub factor of psychographics. But psychographics is how they think and how they buy. So when you're defining these people in psychographics, I want you to think of the phrase ALIA, ALIA. And that is attitudes, lifestyles, interests, and aspirations and goals. So when you're thinking of their attitudes, what attitudes do they have in life? What attitudes do they have towards education, towards whatever? Like what are their attitudes that may align with yours? What lifestyle do they live? Are they young and they like to travel, or are they young and they like to stay home? Right? They're homebodies. Are they older and they like to travel? Or are they older and they like to stick around because they got grandkids? Right? What are their interests? Are they into NASCAR? Or are they into Formula One? Are they into American football? Are they into European football? Whatever. Those are the interests that you need to know for them. So again, you can connect with them. And also, what are their aspirations? What are their goals? If you know what their goals are, don't you think that would be relevant? So that way people can connect with you and go, oh man, that person gets me. And that's going to be really important, especially when you're trying to build and deliver trust. So you are saying, appreciate it. Bishal, okay, very good. Thank you. I'm not sure what I said, but it's good to have you here joining me from YouTube. So again, these are the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Please take the time to define these. If you have not done that, I would say if you have not taken the time to define them and they are not written down from a 1 to a 10, they're now greater than a 5, in my opinion. So you really have to have them written down and you really have to have them well defined. Take some time to get really clear in terms of what these 3 things are, and that will make it so much easier for you when you're trying to sell from stage. So when we're talking about core purpose in the context of being on stage, this is also like what you sell specifically. What is the purpose of you being on stage? Are you trying to sell something? You have a high ticket thing? Are you trying to get people to sign up for something? What is it? What's the purpose that you're trying to achieve here? And that's where you're starting to understand this Godfather offer. The Godfather offer is an offer that's so good that people just will not be able to refuse it. They're going to feel like an idiot to say no. So this is where you have to stop and think about this. And you'd say, well, if I'm not really clear about this, it's going to be really difficult for you to sell something if you're not really clear about what the purpose is. And a lot of times, and I will tell you that this is something that I did. And yeah, it feels great when you get off stage. You're like, hey, thanks so much. You've been a great crowd. And you get, roaring applause, but no sales. That sucks. You know what I would rather applaud? The dollars in my bank account. And I'm not saying that in a mean, crude, or crass way, but a lot of times how I ended the presentation really made a difference in terms of how I sold. So the thing is, like, the last thing to do is to make sure that people understand the last thing to do is not to applaud, but the last thing to do is to get up out of their chairs and go to the back of the room with a credit card in their hand, or to click on that link on the screen and buy whatever it is you're selling. I don't have anything to sell today, by the way. So you can put your credit cards away. I don't have anything to sell. You want to go buy something, go to my website. You can buy a book, I guess. But I'm not here to sell you something. I'm just here. That way you guys can feel like, oh, he's really not trying to sell you something. No, I'm really not. Because I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to, like, this. Otherwise, it would just bastardize this whole thing that I'm doing. I really want you to learn this. So understanding that core purpose is understanding what you sell and developing that Godfather offer that people are going to feel so stupid. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, why wouldn't I say yes to this? And again, think about core values. What you say and how you say it is defined and going to come through in your core values. And finally, your client avatar is who you're speaking to in the room. That's going to be really important when you're thinking about the makeup of the room. If you're speaking, especially to a buying unit, one buying unit might be a husband and wife, or a buying unit might be a brother and sister, or it could be a single individual. So you might have 50 people in a room, but only maybe 15 buying units, right? You have 50 people in a room and maybe 12 buying units, right? Whatever it is. But I'm just saying you have to understand that, that avatar could be represented not just by a single person, but it could be 1, 2, or a group of people. Okay. So think about that when you're working through and defining your business vision. All right, let's get to the business psychology. The psychology, if we talked about systems and the effort you are putting for education. Oh, it is my pleasure. I love this stuff. I absolutely love it. And the reason why, thank you, Bishal, I appreciate you saying that. Listen, I do this stuff for free and I don't charge for this just because, yeah, I do have stuff that people can buy. But I'm telling you, like, I really enjoy educating and I get most of my money from real estate. So I get to do this because I truly enjoy it, because I truly love what it is that I get to do. And yeah, I don't have thousands and thousands of people who follow me, I'm not that guy, but And it's not really anything I particularly want. I mean, if it grows into that, I suppose that'd be okay. But I just want people to understand so they can take what they're learning and get to the next level, right? Because I just think there's a lot of stuff that people are putting out there, especially stuff that they're charging for it, that I'm just like, man, I don't know that I would have paid anything for that, right? Let alone the amount of money they paid for it. All right, let's get to the psychology component of this. All right. So the psychology component is you have both a personal and individual psychology and also a business and organizational psychology. When you're looking at personal psychology, you're looking at things like self-worth and self-management, limiting beliefs, emotional intelligence, things along those lines. For again, that's the individual and personal psychology. That's all the individual head trash that we walk around with. When you're looking at business and organizational psychology, you're looking at things that are both external and you're looking at things that are internal to the business. So let's look at the business psychology for a second. You're looking at both internal and external. Internal are things like management and leadership. Those are things that really help determine the course of the course and direction of the business, right? Management is about getting things done. Leadership is about setting priorities, making decisions, and aligning everyone behind a common message, right? So management is about differences. Leadership is about unity. That's about the best way that I can line that up. When you're looking at external psychology, you're looking at things like vendors, which is really more around like negotiations. You're looking at things like politics, especially, and I'm not talking about internal politics. I'm talking like the political spectrum that's out there. Trust and know. You grow a business big enough, you will start attracting politicians to your door. That's just the nature of it. And of course, you're looking at buying psychology. We're going to spend a few minutes on the buying psychology component of this because that's really what we're talking about when we're selling from stage. When you're selling to an audience, this is a big deal. So remember, your job, your main job, is to build massive amounts of trust with your audience. And this is really, really critical because if you can't build trust with them, or if you start speaking in ways that are going to diminish your trust, people are not going to buy from you. And you may never know why. You might think, they might think, yeah, he was really smart. He really gave good information. But I don't know, man. He said something that I just didn't know that I could trust him. Or she said something about, not loving her mother that much. And you're like, oh, right, that could be a character issue, right? So you really got to be paying attention to what it is that you're saying from stage because you could be isolating people. But there's two main areas. These are going to be really helpful for you to prepare your Godfather offer around creating and delivering. Not once you have your offer together, about creating and delivering your presentation. These two things here, the 15 reasons why people buy and the 7 principles of persuasion. These things are foundational. And knowing all of these things up front is going to make you much more effective when you try to sell from stage. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of these up. And I'm just going to blast through them really quickly. But, the 15 reasons why people buy is to make money, save time, avoid effort, escape pain. A pain could be emotional pain, could be physical pain, right? Could be spiritual pain. People buy for more comfort. They will buy for better health. And better health could be the form of less stress, right? It could be to gain praise, to feel more love, increase their status from their current tribe. People will buy for truth, especially if they have felt lied to in the past. They'll buy for growth. They'll buy for novelty. They'll buy just because something's new, right? And let me go, I skipped over truth here, but people will buy for truth, especially if they felt lied to in the past. Like, that's a big deal. They'll buy for certainty or more control. And they will buy to be in more contribution to others. So what I want you to do is I want you to take that list and I want you to think of all the ways, directly or indirectly, of how you, in your product or service, helps people directly or indirectly make money. I want you to think of all the ways, directly or indirectly, your product or service helps people save money or save time or avoid effort, right? I want you to do this and come up with as many creative answers that you can come up with, directly or indirectly, how your product or service helps them in all 15 of these reasons why people will buy. And understanding that is really going to help you understand the buying psychology. Now, you can't do this if you don't have your client avatar really dialed in. That's what we talked about in the 3 C's of business vision. Okay, remember, we're talking strategy here. I'm a strategist. I'm not going to give you a bunch of tactics because the tactic I give you may be misapplied, or the tactic I give you might not be in alignment with the strategy that you're trying to incorporate. Make sense? So this is why I say you got to look at things top down first. So let's talk about the 7 principles of persuasion. This is something talked about by Dr. Robert Cialdini, and he recognized that people have these. This is how it's very easy to persuade people if you understand reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, scarcity, and familial. So these 7 principles, reciprocity is that if I do something for you, you'll want to do something for me, right? Especially if I offer you something of high value. For those of you who are on this training, you gave me your email address, right? And I'll be contacting you from time to time. And you may want to do me a solid down the road, right? But again, I'm not keeping score. I'm not sitting here going, oh man, well you sat in that training. I don't do it that way. Like that to me is just disingenuous. Just offer stuff and it will come back to you. That's it, especially if it's high value. And who determines the value? You do, right? The other person does, not you. So the next one is commitment and consistency. The commitment and consistency is that because we as human beings like to remain consistent or be thought of as consistent, that we like to make these small micro commitments, and this is how we make bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger commitments because we like to remain consistent. So this is very important when people are being persuaded to do something that they wouldn't otherwise normally do, is because they get these micro commitments along the way. They get these small yeses. And that's also understanding these principles of persuasion. When you're talking to a crowd, how is that important? Get them to say yes. Get them to agree with you. Get them to raise their hands. Hey, who agrees with me with blah, 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 right? And make sure you know that answer up front. There's nothing worse when you're up front and go, hey, how many of you really enjoyed watching the basketball game last night? And everyone's like, right, no one watched the basketball game, right? Well, that would be a problem. Here in Indiana, everybody's talking about the college football game that IU had won. They had a perfect season and then they won the championship. Everybody's talking about that, right? So that would be something that I'd want to know. But again, I wanted people to say yes and get people to say yes and agreeing with what I'm saying. So it's important that they make those commitments along the way. Wouldn't you think it's true that X, Y, and Z? Get them to agree with you. Get them to make commitments. Get them to be consistent. Okay, so that's important. You're also talking about social proof. Social proof is that, again, have you ever started clapping in a room, and because you started clapping, other people started clapping, and then once a few other people, you get to that tipping point, then the whole room starts clapping? That's social proof. And that is because we tend to want to follow the crowd to a certain extent. So that social proof is really important. So again, when you're demonstrating, and I'll talk about social proof here in a little bit, with a couple that I work with named Brian and Kara. Brian and Kara, they are my social proof. I can offer them as a real example. Okay, and I have plenty of social proof, but I'm just using that as demonstration. Liking, people will do business not because they like you. Yes, they want to like you, but are they like you, right? That's important for persuasion. They want to feel like you're connected. If I came in here and said, well, I'm a PhD and I've made $1 bazillion and I'm so superior to you, A, you guys are probably going to throw tomatoes at your screen, and B, you're probably not going to stay, or you're going to mentally check out. And that is going to be really important, because if you're trying to connect with the audience, you cannot come across as superior to them. You cannot influence people if they are feeling judged by you. So you have to be careful about that. And this is why they have to be, is this person like me? Not do they like you, but is this person like me? That's important. Authority, demonstrating that you have authority, and that, that could be through success. That could be as an author. That could be as, having some credentials, whatever that is. Scarcity. There's another reason why, again, people will like to buy something if they think it's scarcity. If they think it's abundant, there's no urgency for them to do it. So if they feel like there's only 10 units that they can buy and 7 of them are already gone, you're going to probably see people, pushing old ladies out of the way to get to the back of the room so they can buy the next thing, right? And then familial. Familial is, are they familiar to you? Like, is this someone, oh yeah, I've seen you posting all the time on the internet, or yeah, I see you around town all the time, right? Or, oh, you went to high school, you and I went to the same high school. That's familial. right? So this is really, really important when you're talking about 7 principles of persuasion. So how do you incorporate these things from stage? Well, we're going to talk about that, some elements here, but think about how you can incorporate these things, these elements of persuasion into your presentation when you're speaking, because these elements are really critical. So not only the 15 reasons why people will buy, think about why they're going to want to buy from you, why they could want to buy from you, and think about different ways that you can show up and bring high value so you can trigger reciprocity. So you can get them to make micro commitments in the beginning to make bigger commitments at the end, to demonstrate social proof through testimonials or some other people even in the crowd that you have worked with, right? Are they like you? Can you demonstrate authority? What do you have that's actually scarce and not like to just available to anybody? And maybe you might want to sell to the entire room, but maybe there's only a certain pricing that's available. Whatever. Show some demonstrate some real scarcity, and finally demonstrate what's familial. What is familiar to them, which again you can demonstrate through geography, you can demonstrate through demographics, or even psychographics. So these are the sorts of things that you want to think about in terms of buying psychology. So let's talk about preparing the offer. When you're preparing the Godfather offer, you want to do this first, and this is really important. I've got exactly the pirating rate is just increasing. Pirating rate is just increasing. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but X build tech. I'm trying to think of what I was talking about in terms of pirating. Okay. Well, thank you. I think I'm not really sure. All right. So, what I want you to do is I want you to think of the Godfather offer first. I want you to create the offer before you try to create the presentation. And this is going to make it easier for you to create content that aligns. So you're going to create the offer first and then work on the presentation backwards, or at least think of what the offer is first and then try to make a logical conclusion to say, okay, well, there's the mountaintop, and yeah, are you going to go straight there? Probably not. You're going to go up the mountain, down the mountain, around a tree, right? Like, you're going to get there. But the point is, you want to think of the destination before you get started. Otherwise, it's going to be a very wonky back and forth iterations of your presentation. So I just want you to understand that creating an offer is not something that you can rush. You have to take your time doing this. We're going to go through some steps on how to create a Godfather offer. And this is first and foremost, again, we've already kind of laid it out a little bit, but first and foremost, I want you to consider the 15 reasons why people will buy. I want you to layer your offering, and then I want you to create a value stack. So let's go through these things real quick. When you consider the 15 reasons why people buy, remember, these are the 15 reasons why people buy that we talked about already. So what you're going to do, let's say for argument's sake, you're going to come up with all the different reasons. So you're going to look at make money. What are all the reasons, directly or indirectly, all the different ways that people directly or indirectly that you can help them make money, okay? Again, directly or indirectly. You might say, well, I have a gym membership. Okay. Can you directly or indirectly help people make money? If they feel healthier, they're more likely to be more productive. That stands to reason, right? So let's look at making money. So making money, as an example, at my work as a strategist, I help with lead generation. I help how to sell one-to-one. I help how to sell one-to-many. I help with pricing strategy. I help with A/B testing. I help people learn how to borrow as a business. Those are just 6 different ways that I help people make money, okay, as a strategist. Okay, so again, directly or indirectly. Now, do I market myself this way? Not necessarily, but it's important that I determine these things up front. Okay, so this will make more sense here in just a minute. Secondly, there's also helping them understand their financial statements. That was the last one here. So secondly, what we're going to do is we're going to layer the offer. Now, first and foremost, what's an offer? An offer is a grouping of products or services which benefits and has meaning for the client avatar. Benefits and has meaning. That is critical, because if I was going to sell you this, let's say this chapstick, okay, and it's good for my lips because I have chapped lips. And if I was going to sell you this, I would sell you this one thing for $5, okay? But if I was to wrap this with this little cover thing and this box of mints, right now I can group this together as an offer for $11. Okay. So what it is it's not just the one thing. In fact, if I just sell this one thing, I would hate to just sell this one thing, because now it's like, well, how does this one thing compare to that one thing over there? Now I'm not differentiating at all. But when I wrap these things together as a grouping, it's a lot more difficult for people to compare apples to apples. Okay. So I want you to understand an offer is generally, it could be one product, but I'm telling you, most superior offers are groupings of products or services which benefits and has meaning for the client avatar. Now, again, if I put this on my lips, it benefits my lips because it makes my lips protected, right? It doesn't, so now they're not irritated. That's a benefit. What's the meaning though? What's the meaning? What could a meaning be? The meaning is when I kiss my wife, she feels my lips are really soft and she kind of wants to kiss me more. I don't know about you. I'm kind of down with kissing my wife, right? But please don't kiss my wife. But what I'm saying is, like, that gives me a meaning. Meaning is why people are going to want to buy. Please pay attention to this. Meaning is what's going to get people to actually pull out their credit cards, not the benefit. You cannot make the assumption that people are going to jump to the benefit automatically. Or I'm sorry, they're going to take the meaning and jump. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. They're not going to make the automatic jump from benefit to meaning. You cannot make that assumption. If you do make that assumption, you're risking your sales. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for argument's sake, that you want to buy a really fast car, okay? And in the US, let's say that you want to buy a car that's got 500 horsepower. Okay, 500 horsepower. What's the benefit? So the feature is that the car's got 500 horsepower. The benefit is that it goes from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds. Okay, that's pretty fast. Okay, that's a benefit. But what's the meaning? What does it mean? It means that you're probably going to have one of the fastest, if not the fastest car in your neighborhood. And it's going to make you feel like a pretty cool dude or a pretty cool chick. Make sense? That's the meaning. That meaning is why people are really going to buy. Not because of the benefit, not because it's 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, but because of what it means to them. People are going to be envious of them. It's going to raise their status, right? 15 reasons why people buy. It's going to increase, they're going to feel more love, like people are going to be paying more attention to them. Make sense? So this is why you have to understand that meaning is why people are actually going to want to buy. That is critical. Don't skip over that part. And most people, they just go feature. Hey, here's this book. It's got 300 pages. That is a feature. The benefit, you're going to learn how to code AI. Okay, which means what? Which means that you can create a whole new business for yourself, 6 and 7 figure business for yourself, and have an amazing life. Okay, now we're talking about some real meaning. But you have to bridge that gap for them. Don't leave it up to them to do it, because otherwise you risk them not doing it for themselves. Okay? So that's really critical. And if you do that well from stage, you will have people that will really line up to buy your products. So let's look at this. So in other words, let's say I've got make money, all right? So I've got all these things. I help people with making money directly or indirectly by helping with their lead generation, how to sell one-to-one, how to sell one-to-many, pricing strategy, A/B testing, borrowing as a business, learning their financial statements. I help them save money, right? Through effective marketing and tailored strategy and fractional agreements, coming up with clear strategies, being metric driven, removing guesswork, preventing growing broke. I help them save time by staff training, individual one-to-one training, integration, profits are much faster, training on your needs, hiring right, flash reports, and things like that. Okay. All of those things that are there, that's how I'm going to help them. These are all things that are going to be benefits, but they're also going to be tied into meaning. Like, what's the real meaning? Like, some of this is benefits and some of it is meaning, but really you want to be paying attention to the meaning. That's why people are actually going to want to buy from you, not the benefits. So when you're thinking about the Godfather offer steps, again, it's about creating, the last piece of this is creating that value stack. That value stack, remember, Your job is to create massive trust with the audience. So how do you create trust with your audience? And this is that last piece of the puzzle where you're creating that value stack. So we're going to get to that here in just a second. But when you're creating the presentation, and we're going to get to the value stack here in just a little bit, because that you've got to understand, like, that's part of the presentation. The value stack is what you're going to be working up to. And I just want you to make sure that I'm not skipping, I'm not moving this around without purpose. It's important that you understand. We'll come back to that. But the four functions of business, these are true in every single business. The four core functions are lead generation, they're lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And the lead generation is where you're targeting your exact avatar. This is where you're having a conversation with the people who are sitting in the audience straight, right across from you. So this is important. And when you have your client avatar dialed in, you know exactly who you want to work with. It's much easier for you to have conversations with them and direct your marketing towards. And you bring in the most amount of money with least amount of drama. I don't know about you, man. I'm in my 50s. I do not want drama in my life. Okay. But lead generation, it lets the world know that you're out there through a variety of marketing approaches. And that's what this component does from selling from stage. That's really what it can do. It's also can be part of lead generation. Realistically, it really is all selling though from the time you get on the stage. So selling is obviously having that conversation with the people who are, you've got lead generation, you've got sales, that's really closing that loop. And then of course you've got the operational function, which is the fulfillment function, right? It's doing the thing that you said that you're going to be doing. And then of course the accounting function, which is collecting the money and paying the bills. Okay. So this is all relevant to the four core functions of business in your organization, right? So part of your selling from stage could be part lead generation leading right into the sale that also goes directly into the accounting. All of this needs to be considered when you're stepping on stage. All of this needs to be considered, like, what is the next piece of fulfillment? What's the next piece once the piece is fulfilled? How are they collecting the money? And then how are guarantees going to work? And all of these things. I'm just bringing this up now so you can start thinking about this in advance of getting on that stage. Because if you get on the stage and don't know how, like I'll give you a great example. I was speaking at a real estate investors association, and I did really, really well. And I had all these people that wanted to buy this course that I was selling. And I said, okay, great. Go to the back of the room. And Joe in the back, I'm changing the name, Joe in the back, and Joe's waving his hand. I said, go to the back. Joe's got, Joe will take your payment and we'll be good to go. Right. So I'm up front answering questions. I'm moving to the back of the room. I got all these people, basically ready to, put their credit cards, out. Like, they've got their credit cards out. They're ready to buy. I mean, I'm counting. I'm like, by the back of the napkin math, it was probably going to be a $25,000 sale, gross. And I get to the back and Joe says, hey, this is great. Do you have your credit card forms? And I said, Joe, you specifically said that you had credit card forms and not to bring mine. Right? Now, in that moment, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And now I'm like saying, okay, hang on everybody, just 1 second. We're going to get your credit cards statements. But the fortunate thing was I knew something just told me to have something ready. So I said, oh, you know what? I do have them. They're in my bag. Now, right there in that moment was not the time to get into an argument about Joe, about who's right or who's wrong, because I'm starting to see as people are like milling around, dude, they're going to get ready to start putting their credit cards away and walking away if they have to wait too long. Okay. So I'm trying to keep the crowd pumped up and everything else. So I went and grabbed the forms and got them. I might have lost a couple in there because it was a bit of a delay, but it wasn't so much of a delay that I lost anybody. So it was just interesting though. These are the sorts of things you have to be thinking about in advance, because you can really lose people if you're not able to get if you have them jump through too many hoops. It's like, hey, if you want to buy my stuff, go ahead and send me an email, and in 3 days or so, I'll email you back, and then we'll just figure out when I can, collect payment from you. Dude, the opportunity is gone. You have got to be able to connect with them in that moment, or they're going to be gone forever. Okay. So let's talk about, creating the presentation. So creating the presentation is in creating the offer you have to create the offer. You want to deliver a massive amount of value. You want to use story, and you also need to use seeding. So we'll talk about these things here, and then we're going to be wrapping up. Creating the offer is really important. So you want to consider the 15 reasons why people buy. You want to match the offer to the length of the presentation. So in other words, if you're going to have people that are going to be listening for about an hour, you got to make sure that it's not such a big offer that you haven't had enough time to deliver trust or create trust with the audience. So in other words, as you are demonstrating competence, you're demonstrating a good character. Those are two main critical things about creating trust with the audience. You have to recognize that if you're only up on stage for 15 minutes, you're probably not going to sell anything unless it's free or very low ticket, like $9, $30 maybe, maybe something under 100. But I'm telling you, like, you need generally a longer period of time for people to get to trust you. So unless you have a really compelling offer, like they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is such a no-brainer, and they already know who you are, you may struggle, right? So you might want to look like, hey, if you're on stage, and I don't have any hard and fast numbers for this, but I've been selling from stage for long enough now to know that if I'm on stage for less than 45 minutes, me asking for any sort of money from stage is kind of tricky, right? So I'm just saying, not that I can't. And I have been on stage for half an hour and I've sold okay, not great, but okay, lower ticket items for like $27, $37, things like that. And my higher ticket items, I've not sold well. So generally, if you're going to be selling like a higher ticket item, and it just depends, it's in the eye of the beholder. But if you're asking for $1,000 or several $1,000s or tens of thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, you may need to be able to spend more time with them. You might have to spend a 2 or 3 day workshop with them. By the end of the second day, you are starting to seed the offer. Okay, we'll talk about seeding here in just a second. So you want to match the offer not only to the length, but also match the offer to the content. So in other words, the content that you're walking them through should be in alignment with the offer. The offer should be a continuation of the content that you walked them through. And I really like demonstrating competence. I really like teaching people like what to do. And then if they want to get to the next level, okay, cool. Then let's talk about working together. I really do not like this thing went on for a while, and I don't see it so much anymore, but teaching what to do but not how to do it. Man, that just aggravated me to no end. So like I like teaching people, like the what and the how, but if they don't know, if they're not confident in the how, okay, cool, then let's work together. All right. So when you're creating the actual offer, so we talked about creating the offer, now we're talking about delivering massive value. Delivering massive value, again, like I mentioned, do not do the what not how method. That just, I'm sorry, that just pisses people off. Like, okay, great, you told me all of the stuff that I need to do, but I don't even know where to start. Okay? Yeah, you can do some of that, I guess, but I really want you to deliver lots of value. Again, remember, your job is to create trust. And again, the market can only judge you by your samples. The market can only judge you by what you give away for free. So when you're starting to think about this, and this has been done forever, like think of the door-to-door salesman that used to sell like scrubby, little things for the scrubbing pots, and they'd say, hey, I'm going to leave you a little one here. This is a sample. I'll come back tomorrow and see if you like it. That's what they used to do all the time. The market judges you by your samples. And this has been the way it's been going on for 100 years or more. Okay. So think about that. Remember, the fastest way to create trust is to demonstrate competence. Demonstrate you know what you're talking about. And that's how you can be that authority from stage and say, hey, has anybody ever experienced this? Well, this is experienced because you probably experienced this thing too. And they're like, oh my gosh, I never made that connection. Yeah, right? So now you're starting to demonstrate some competence. So again, deliver massive value for them because that also triggers what? 7 principles of persuasion. Reciprocity. It starts to trigger reciprocity. You start getting people to recognize that they can trust you, that you are, that you know what it is that you're talking about, and then of course they're going to want to respond with reciprocity. So the use of story. This is also important to help transport the listener who's in the audience, and the story makes you so much more relatable. So I have a little bit of a framework that I use, and this is interesting. Like again, one of the things that I use in actually, I'm going to come back to this because I was thinking about this in the wrong spot. But the story, if you're telling a story, what happens when you tell the story is it automatically makes you more relatable because that person puts themselves in the story. It's just human nature. It's just the way it happens. But the other thing that you can do is also share a testimonial or a case study. I mentioned earlier about my clients, Brian and Kara Kiefer. I've worked with this couple for, gosh, close to 7 years now. And they are a phenomenal couple. They live in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And Brian has a series of coffee shops. Kara, she works, she's a dental professional. But the interesting thing is that when I start telling the story about how Brian and Kara have walked through their real estate business, and Brian has this coffee shop business, and everything that they have, and then now they have a roasting operation, I start telling that story as a testimonial. The interesting thing here is that people go, oh, and what does that trigger? We talked about that in the 7 principles of persuasion, and that is social proof. So when I start talking about different people and bringing them up as a case study, all of a sudden people go, oh, well, if he was able to help them, then he might be able to help me in my roofing business or in my coffee business or whatever. Okay. So I just want you to think about the importance again, how testimonials work. When you start using stories, and this is what I was thinking of earlier, just had it out of order, is think of the 3T format. The 3T format, when you're telling a story, it goes title, triggering event, transformation. Okay. Title, triggering event, transformation. So when you're telling a story, the title might be, I was 10 years old, or we were poor growing up, or I was really small for my age growing up. I was picked on a lot. Title, right? Title, right? Or whatever it was, that's generally where people go, oh, so he's telling me. So when I was 7 years old, title, okay? When I was 7 years old, now there's a triggering event. What happened? There was some sort of triggering event. So I'll tell you this story. When I was 7 years old, I really wanted my parents to buy me something at this local little general store that we were at. And it was dark. I remember it being like cold, but not cold enough to like where it was like dangerous to like walk outside. I grew up in upstate New York. So I was 7 years old, and I was really mad because I wanted to get bubble gum or something from the general store. And my father was adamant, no, you're not getting bubble gum. So I said, no, let me out, right? So I get out of the car and he lets me out. Keep in mind, I'm 7 years old, and I start walking home. Now it's probably 5 miles to our house. And we did not live we lived in the middle of nowhere, like literally the middle of nowhere. So we were in this little dinky little town, and I'm walking, and I'm 7 years old. And I remember this one guy holler across the street from me. He goes, hey, how old are you? And I said, 7. And I'm like walking like I'm, like I own the place. And I was little for my age. So I'm walking, and I'm getting all the way outside the town. And I'm just hot, right? I'm just super mad. And I'm walking. And I get to the outside of town, and it is dark. It is very dark. Like it is like and of course you hear every sound in the woods, right? This is in the Catskills. So I'm thinking I'm hearing like raccoons and like all sorts of bears and all sorts of stuff that's going to eat me. And I'm now like outside of town where there's no lights. Okay. So all of a sudden I start to cry because I'm like starting to freak out. And I'm like, again, I'm a little boy. I'm 7 years old. So all of a sudden I realize how much of a brat I was being and how good I had it in the back of my father's Lincoln Continental. So let me tell you the trick. What was the title in that story? What was my title? I was 7 years old, right? And a little frustrated, right? That was the title. The triggering event was me getting out of the car and walking. And I added in some details to that story. Now, again, I could have probably have added some to make the story longer. I could have taken away some to make the story shorter. But the point is that triggering event was really about me, was really me walking. And then the triggering event really was when I got to the outside of town and I realized I was alone and I was not safe. So that was the triggering event. Okay, so the title was me being frustrated kid walking out on my own, triggering event, realizing, oh crap, right? That's like the what happened, but also now I had this transformation, this revelation, this new state, this teachable moment that made me realize, oh crap, I really effed up. Make sense? So start to think about different stories using this 3T story framework, which really makes stories so much easier for you to tell. Okay? So, and I'm telling you, when you use stories, just like for you, some of you in this story, you probably put yourself in this story. You're probably like, yep, I know exactly what he's talking about. I've been that mad, right? I've done stupid things like this, right? So very good. So when you're talking about use of story, and again, creating the presentation, we're also talking about seeding. And seeding is really important when we're using something called the contrast principle. So seeding is something where you're using, like, for example, seeding is something like, hey, for those of you who might be interested in working with me, don't worry, it's not like, $20,000 or some crazy number. The reason why seeding works so well is because, yes, my pricing is not $20,000. Now, if you're hiring me as a CSO, it could be well in excess of that. But the reason why I said it's not $20,000 is because the mind has problems with negation. It doesn't handle negation well. What's the worst thing if you have a kid going up to bat playing baseball? What's the worst thing you could say to that kid? Don't strike out. No, that's the worst thing you'd say, right? Don't strike out, because the mind doesn't hear don't strike out. The mind hears strike out. Mind has problems with negation. So you'd want to make sure that you're saying, like, if you're using the seeding principle, this is called the contrast principle, where you're saying, hey, look, don't worry, it's not like $20,000. The mind hears $20,000. So when you come in with your price of, say, $5,000, they're like, oh, whew, he did say it wasn't 20,000. Okay? So that does matter, and that's called seeding, okay? But you're also using it to help manage expectations when you're delivering the presentation, okay? And that is this is where you start to remember reciprocity, and you start to bring in other things where people, because you're bringing in so much value, people are going to they're going to at least want to listen to you when you present the value stack, when you present the offer and the value stack. And this is what we talked about here, about the value stack. And we're going to come up to that here in just a hot second. But you have to have also in that presentation, again, remember reciprocity. Remember, people are going to they're at least going to want to listen to you because you brought good value. You're going to present this offer in a value stack, and you're also going to give them a very clear call to action. So the value stack is where you divorce price from value. Price and value are not the same thing. What you pay for this thing for $5, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got $20 worth of pain on my lips. Yes, I'll happily pay $5. Okay. That's where you have to disconnect price from value. Value should massively exceed the price. The minute price equals value is when you're on the chopping block. Remember that. Value in the mind of the client has to massively exceed the price, and then it will be much easier for you to sell. So in a value stack, generally what you're going to do is you're going to talk to them about the number of things that you're bringing to them. So you have thing 1, which is valued at 4K, thing 2, which is valued at 6K, thing 3, which is valued at 8K, then you give a bonus, and then the total value is 28,000. You've all seen these. We've all seen these things before on commercials and other things like this. You've seen this stuff. But when you're doing this, right, and you're adding all this in here, the total value is 28,000, but today's price is $19.97, right? We've all seen this thing. We've all fallen for it, but we all know how it works. I'm just telling you, this formula is, it might be dated, but it's very, very effective. So but you have to make sure that the values actually make sense, because if you're just going to throw a value on there without actually having something real tangible, you're going to lose the audience. So it's really important that you don't just come up with imaginary valuations. Just say, hey, what would it be worth to you for thing 1 if you were to solve that problem? Well, for many people, it would be worth at least 4,000, right? Because I'm able to save them this amount of time and this amount of dollars and this and blah, 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 blah. I mean, realistically, it's probably worth way more than that, but I just put 4,000. Okay. So this is where you have to start to think about making sure that you're connecting price to value. The other thing is you also should have a guarantee. The longer the guarantee, the better. I have a money and finance course, for example, right now, which is really designed for business owners, and it's $37. And I offer a 395-day guarantee. And people go, well, that's kind of crazy. Yeah, I have a 395-day guarantee because I want people to have 30 days to learn it and a full year to implement it. And if at any point during that time they that 395 days they think that I'm full of crap or anything I taught them wasn't true, they can come and get their money back at any time during that 395 days. Right? You want to know how many returns I've had? None, because it's a really good course. Number one, I can deliver, but number two, I'm dealing with mostly honest people and people who are in alignment with my avatar. Okay. So, all right, we are almost done, guys. So the other thing here is make sure your call to action is absolutely crystal clear. You cannot, you say, damn. I'm not sure what damn is. If you want to highlight that, I'm not sure what you mean, but yes, I think you mean the 395 days. But yeah, it's good, and I know, no one's tried to screw me on that. Like they can take, but it's a really good course. Okay. Anyway, so again, when you're talking about the call to action, specifically, you have to tell them exactly what to do. Don't leave it up to them. Don't think like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do here. Tell them exactly. Look, there's a link right there, right below me. Click on that right now and go and buy the thing. Right? Yeah, about that. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's 395-day guarantee, and I have zero problems with and in fact it reverses that risk. It reduces the risk for them, even though it's like $37. I probably could charge like $137 for as much value as it, but I also want people to feel like it's not just another thing. When then they get to the other side, like, oh my gosh, you should have charged way more for this. But like, I also don't want money to get, if someone's got money problems, I don't want money to be the thing that holds them back from actually investing themselves. So anyway, there's that. But specifically, you have to tell them, click this link or, do the thing. Like, but again, you also have to explain why they need to do it, but also why they need to do it now. Because if they go, yeah, I'll think about this. Listen, you need to do it now. You know why? Because if you don't do it now, give them a real compelling reason in terms of why they need to do it now. Why are they in pain now? If they don't do it now, look, all you're doing is delaying the healing, or you're making the problem you're letting the problem get way worse where you may not be able to fix the problem. Right? Find compelling reasons why they should do it, but find more compelling reasons why they need to do it now and not wait. So the key points here, as we're going to put the fries in the bag, is there's no need to convince them to buy. You don't need to sell. You don't need to like punch them in the mouth and go like, hey, come up here or I'm going to eat my hat, right? You don't have to make all these gimmicky things. You're just delivering lots of value. And then when you have the offer at the end, you go, hey, cool. Did I deliver a lot of value for you? Cool, great. Well, let me show you what it's like to go to the next level if you're interested in spending some money. And I've never had anybody leave unless they really had to leave. Right? They're like, they'll listen. And generally the applause for me is that when they stick around for the offer. If they say, hey, look, I'll start out a lot of times when I do have a selling thing, I'll say in the beginning, look, I do have an offer at the end. I will tell you when the offer is going to be. So if you choose to leave, you can leave and you don't even have to stick around for it. It's rare. I mean, I don't know that I've ever had anybody that said, yeah, as soon as I got to your offer, I left. Like, I've never had that. But sometimes people just leave because they have different commitments or whatever else. But most of the time, I also make the offer pretty short, so they're not sitting there for another hour listening to my droning on and on. I want to be respectful of their time. So the main thing is that once you follow these people, once you get them buying, once you get them in your atmosphere, you got to follow up with them, follow through, follow them over and over and over. So here's the main thing. For those of you, if you got any questions, go ahead and type them in. I am going to offer you something. It's totally free though. You can, if you'd like to join me in my school community, I have got to take some of these tabs and close them down. I don't know why I've got all these opened up. There we go. So I'm going to offer you guys, if you'd like to join me in my school community, right now it is 100% free. And it is let's see here. I'm going to change this because this is actually, so this was my old, so this is actually school.com/strategic boardroom. and that is in the that's in the link, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it up on the stage as on the screen as well. So for those of you who are interested, you can click on that link. There is no cost to join that as of right now. That will change. I'm just letting you know that will change probably within the next 30 days. So if you are interested, you want to join, you'll be grandfathered in, but I am planning on changing that just because I am looking for people who are really interested in taking their stuff and their learning to the next level. So anyway, that's all I have. I don't see any questions popping up. I'll give you guys another minute as I sip on some water here. All right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around, and we'll call that a wrap. All right. Well, thanks again for sticking around, everybody. You have been absolutely fun. I really do appreciate you sticking around and enjoying this. And this is, I just really enjoy. I really just enjoy this sort of thing. So this is the kind of stuff that really winds my clock. Mahmood, thank you for the informative discussion. Absolutely, this has been fun. Really, yeah. In fact, this has been for this session. I think this is the one that's been most well attended for the speaking from stage. I usually don't get a lot of people that attend this one, but I had more than normal. So that's been great. All right, everybody. Thanks again for sticking around. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys in the boardroom. Take good care. You're welcome, XP.